today. I suck today. We suck today. It was awful from the get-go. I mean, it just can't play like that. Didn't start fast. We didn't pick it up in the middle, and we didn't finish strong. So, plain and simple, we have to be better. Lions are a good ball club that if we play like that, we're going to lose every time. So, I think the defense and special teams did an amazing job yet again. And offense, we just need to pick our shit up. There's really no other way around it.
Woo! Yeah, so there you go, guys. Welcome to Real Bucs Talk. It's live here on Monday. I'm your host, Michael Plus, joined as always by co-host Mark Ramirez. And tonight we got a special guest, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Trevor Sikkema of PFF. Also the lead draft analyst now for PFF, and also does a great job at the NFL Stock Exchange podcast, which I am a constant listener of. It's an awesome content that he provides. So, Trevor, thank you for joining us. It's awesome to have you back on here. It's been a minute, but it's great to have you back.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on the show. This has been cool for me over the last couple of weeks. I've had the chance to actually talk Bucs football, which, you mentioned now covering the league kind of nationally for PFF. I don't get to do that as much. So unless I come on shows like this one, sometimes I just have a lot of Bucs thoughts and don't get to talk about them very often. So I appreciate you guys having me back on as always. So it's good to be with y'all.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
we're going to flood you with Bucs questions and Bucs obsessive stuff. Yeah, it gets passionate over here.
That's good with me. That's all good with me.
Yeah, so as you guys saw there with the video, obviously the Buccaneers lost yesterday to the Lions 20-6. Just wasn't a good game offensively, to say the least. A lot of missed opportunities, a lot left on the table. And, if those plays are made, it could be a completely different outcome. And that's really been the story so far for this Buccaneers team. Even against the Eagles, they left a lot of opportunities on the board. Defensively, again, if you hold a team to 20 points, that should be good enough to, find ways to win. Usually that's the case. But yeah, I mean, I guess let's just dive into it. I mean, what do you see as the issues, Trevor, with this offense right now? Is it just a mix of different things? Obviously the running game is not good.
Yeah.
Pass game has been just kind of up and down and a lot of missed opportunities yesterday.
Yeah. I know that we'll get into the run game because I definitely want to talk about that, but honestly, even with as much struggles as they've had this season with the run game, and particularly this past week against the Lions, they still had opportunities to win that game. If they were just a little bit more consistent, if Baker even plays like an average quarterback against the Lions, they're probably a lot closer when the clock hits zero, maybe even ahead on the scoreboard. But, something that I really love about Baker, and I've always loved about him, whether it was Oklahoma or his time in the NFL, he's not shying away from when things aren't going well and taking the blame when he certainly is part of it. And, as a quarterback, you are. I mean, you are a major pointer of the offense. So if the offense isn't working, a lot of it does fall on you. Sometimes they get some unfair blame, but Baker knows that just comes with it. So I actually love this approach afterwards. I love the attitude. I loved how honest he was. And, what I like the most, he was pissed. I mean, you could tell, like, he's literally pissed off. He's not sitting there at the podium taking the question, very somber. And I don't mean to take it away from anybody who's not nearly as emotional as he is, but you like to see guys get pissed off when they lose. Like, that's the competitive nature. You're trying to get as many competitive guys in your football team as possible. And I think that Baker is definitely one of them. But there's no question he didn't play a good game. And I think when you look at this season, there have been times when they have lacked that consistency, where I felt like that was sort of the case for a little bit of the Minnesota game, but they come out on top because Minnesota turns the ball over so much. So it's not nearly as glaring. You're not so pissed after the game. This past one, inconsistencies were probably as bad as they have been at any point this season in the passing game, and it results in a loss. And it's another one of those barometer games where it's kind of like a litmus test. I was talking to Jay Retcher earlier today on WDAE, and he was kind of saying the same thing. Like, if you beat the Bucs at this point in time for where they currently are, if you beat the Bucs, you're probably a playoff team. If you lose to the Bucs, you're probably not. They are like that gatekeeper right now of what it takes to be a playoff team in the NFC. And unfortunately, the losses that they have, Eagles, Lions, those are top tier teams. Those are the playoff teams. And then the other teams that they beat, probably not. So that's just kind of where this team is right now. I just think inconsistencies really hurt them.
Yeah, the teams we've beaten, I think they have a total of 2 wins now, right? I mean, Bears and Vikings. Yeah, but I mean, to go to your point about how pissed he was after the game, that takes me back to when you were here covering Jameis. Jameis was the same way. They pissed off. We're going to do better. We're going to fix our things. But nothing really got fixed. It was always the same old crap, right? So I'm looking at Baker. Yes, he's just as pissed. And he's notifying you that, okay, no, I sucked. I messed up. I missed the 2 big ones to Trey Palmer. I missed an easy one to Mike Evans. Should have been a 92-yard touchdown. He's owning up to him, yes. But I want to see the fixing. It can't be consistently inconsistent, something that we saw a lot of for 5 years. We're like, oh, it's going to turn the corner.
Right.
That's the scary part of Baker, that is this truly what it is, or is it just a mulligan of a game that was a good team? Honestly, yes, the Lions are a very aggressive downhill team. I thought there was times where we did exploit that, but they just don't do it consistently. I think it's a little bit of everything of not having a running game, relying too much on Baker, and then just missing the opportunities that were there. But I'm just worried, is Baker what he is, or is it just this type of game?
Yeah, they're definitely not getting any help from the run game. And again, I do want to get into that, but just to kind of keep it on the Baker focus, because it's what we're talking about right now. I was chatting with John Ledyard, who formerly of Pewter Report. He does a good job keeping tabs with the Bucs still. He watches a lot of film on this stuff, and we were having a good conversation about Baker, and kind of the conversation that we were having was, what's the hierarchy of re-signing that Jason Light would have over the next couple of years? Baker naturally comes up, and part of that conversation of what I brought to the table is said, hey, you've got the full year to really evaluate him, right? And I think that no matter what, unless Baker plays just catastrophically bad, I don't really think they're going to pull him for Trask. I think that if they really thought that Trask could be the starter and wanted him to be the starter, he would be. And I think that they are pretty comfortable with that right now. And when you look at Baker's journey around the NFL, there's a lot of legitimate, I don't want to say excuses, but let's just say context to why it might not have been as consistent as you want it to be. All those head coaches and offensive coordinators in Cleveland, he was bounced around from the Panthers to the Rams. But even beyond that, Baker's NFL career right now has been, okay, he plays well and then he dips, but he can't get back up. Like, we don't, whether it was his time in Cleveland, I don't really count the time in Carolina because it was just bad there. But we saw like that opening game with the Rams, like, played really well. And then, okay, he struggled, like teams kind of figured him out a little bit, and he never got back up. What is going to make Baker Mayfield worth that next contract, that next year with the Buccaneers? And the big question they have to answer kind of starts right now. Because up to that point, those first 4 games of the season, they were riding high. They were on the high part of the experience. They were playing well. They were winning. Everything was going, not that it was perfect, but it was going well. Now things go poorly, and it's on him. You mentioned it, Mark. It's the missed passes. It's the bad accuracy. It's the stuff where, man, starting quarterbacks in the NFL, you got to hit it. You've got to hit that kind of stuff. And we've never really seen Baker take that dip in production and then really ramp back up to even get back to those highs in the NFL. So that's what I am really going to pay attention to, is exactly what you said. Bucs fans heard it for years from Jameis Winston. We gotta stop turning the ball over. I gotta stop putting it in harm's way. I gotta do that. Never happened. And for Baker, unfortunately, he has been inconsistent throughout his career. So now it is a matter of, does that change? Or maybe even the better question, can that change with him? And that's, I think, what the next 4 or 5 weeks for this team are really going to be about.
Yeah, I mean, it seems now, speaking of offense coordinators and coaches, like, you bring in Dave Canales, and it seems like him and Baker are a good match, because Dave has been presenting answers for Baker, especially on third down. And yesterday, for whatever reason, it just didn't work. But so far this season, like, there has been opportunities for Baker to have success and play at a higher level. And I feel like that gives us at least some hope that he can come back up in level of play, because of Dave Canales presenting what he's been doing as far as scheming guys open. The concepts are good. Like there's plays to be had, as we saw yesterday. Now it's just up to Baker to, make them. And you have to feel confident that, some regards that Baker can get back on that level that we've seen so far this season.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually really like what I've seen from Dave Canales. Like I really do. And I think it's kind of frustrating because, and I've certainly been guilty of this plenty, but when we talk about play callers and coordinators, defense coordinators, offense coordinators, sometimes it really is like everything's going good. Okay, it's all perfect. And then if you have one bad game, it's almost like this guy's a bum.
Yeah.
And it's just there's just such an ebb and flow with an NFL season, especially for Canales doing this for the first time. Like we knew, like,
yeah, there's growing pains.
If you asked every single Bucs fan before the season, is Dave Canales going to have some dud games as a play caller? Every single one of them will be like, well, yeah. But when you actually watch the dud games happen in real time, you kind of go, man, look, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. Like, this is a terrible game. But you just kind of got to take a step back from it. So I like Canales. I really do. I think that they're in a good spot with him. I still think the chemistry is really good with Baker Mayfield. But like you guys said, it's just about going out and executing it.
Yeah, I mean, talk about the roller coaster and ebbs and flows. I mean, against the Eagles, even Buck fans or Bucks media were like, oh, this isn't a good team. This is going to be bad. After one loss, that was the first loss of the season against the Super Bowl contender for the NFC conference. You would expect this was a game where we should have lost like a blown out. We still only allowed 26 points?
25.
25. Offense just couldn't get going yet again. So it's not a defensive issue. It's can we score? I mean, you're still 25 points. You should honestly win that game in an NFL game, or it should be close. We just couldn't score. And it's just showing Dave Canales' sequence issues in those games. I don't necessarily, because when he draws up plays, they're drawn up and they're working. It's more like, to me, when he's calling the certain plays, because sometimes he's calling double runs where our running game doesn't work. I mean, I know I'm mentioning it again, but sometimes he says himself that we're going to be stubborn running the ball. I'm like, yeah, I know the commitment to run, because we didn't run at all last year with Leftwich. Now we're trying to run. But if it's not working, I mean, look what the Lions did. They threw the ball 44 damn times. They realized run into the wall that is Vita Vea. So let's not force it. It's no right. So it's just that little part of his game that I think he's learning again. First time play caller.
Yeah, and it's tough too because as a first time play caller, as a younger coach, you're coming into a coaching staff with Bowles, who it's a second stint as a head coach. I mean, Bowles has been around the league for a long time. He commands a lot of respect. And certainly he's a Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator, right? But even going back to Bowles' days with the Jets and last year as well, like he wants to run the football. Like he wants to be very balanced. And not that they haven't skewed things a little bit, because some people just felt like, oh, all the Bucs do is run the ball, even last year, like with Leftwich. And that wasn't the case. But they still want to be as balanced as possible. Going into last week's game, they had the fifth highest run play percentage out of total plays. And then you look at, okay, that's their volume. That's what they want to do. And then you look at their efficiency. They were dead last in the league in yards per attempt. They're dead last in the league in yards before contact. They were 31st in the league in rushing first downs gained, but after this past week, because they had 0, they are now dead last in that category as well. And they were 29th in the NFL in EPA per rush. So you guys mentioned it. It's not good. I think that the offensive tackles are doing a pretty good job. Certainly Tristan Wirfs is all world. He's incredible. I think Goedeke's playing well as a right tackle. He's being more he's comfortable there. Certainly as a pass protector, I think he's pass protecting really well. Run blocking, okay, he could be better. But then you look at the interior and you go, all right, it's a rookie, a guy who was never really drafted to be a full-time starter, and an aging veteran. And it's just like, that is one of the lowest graded interior offensive line groups in the NFL, if not the lowest that we have over at PFF. These guys just they're not getting pushed. They're not dominating the line of scrimmage. And I also think the Bucs just don't have the dynamic players in the backfield. Like, I think Rachaad White is a good running back, but I think he might have been overhyped a little bit going into the year. I think there are things to like about Sean Tucker, but he's a rookie. Keyshawn Vaughn's been around for a while, hasn't really even cracked an RB3 role. Like, it's kind of over for him. So I agree with you. It's hard because you can't just completely abandon the run. Run is a really important part of controlling the game, controlling the tempo, controlling the clock. You've got to be able to run the football. And the Bucs just can't right now. I think Mock is going to be fine. Yeah. But man, when you look into the distance of the upcoming draft, they got to look at interior offensive line. Because again, like Hainsey wasn't really drafted to be a starter. Hainsey was an experienced, versatile interior offensive lineman who was simply supposed to be a rotational backup behind Alex Kappa, Ali Marpet, and Ryan Jensen. And all of a sudden, all of them are gone.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, I guess we'll stick Hainsey at center. But, you know, you're kind of like punching above your weight class there. So it'll be interesting to see how much they continue to lean on the run game, knowing how inefficient it has been. But it's just, you know, the cavalry's not coming out of nowhere, right? I mean, this is kind of the unit. This is the team that they are. So I'll be very interested to see how much they adjust given Todd Bowles' history, given how much power Dave Canales might have to do that or creativity to do that. And then, of course, in next year's draft, I think they got to be looking along the interior offensive line once again.
Yeah, agreed. And I think you answered this question here, like, why are they better at pass blocking than run blocking? And a lot of it, yeah, it is the interior offense line. It's also, the tight end group is not good. Like, they're just not getting enough from that unit.
Yeah.
The running backs, like you said, I think are more RB2s instead of RB1s. Like, you just don't have that dynamic presence in the backfield, and you don't have a guy who can make something happen out of nothing, which a lot of the times you're getting because the interior offense line is just not being consistent. Or your tight end group where you're trying to rush outside is just not holding their blocks, not finishing. And it just leads to not consistent.
And I'll say this too. I'm kind of just going off of the numbers that PFF has that I've been looking at over the last couple of days. So I haven't really dug into the film specifically myself, but the Bucs have a higher run blocking grade in man blocking or gap blocking concepts. But that is also because in a lot of man blocking concepts, there's a lot of combo blocks. There's a lot of duo blocks. So you can help each other out in that regard.
Right.
They're much worse as a unit when it comes to inside or outside zone runs. And they are running zone concepts at almost double the rate they are running man blocking concepts. I'm not sure exactly why that's the case. Maybe the running backs themselves, like maybe Rachaad White and those guys, they see the running lanes, whether it's intended running lanes or cutback lanes when they are out close towards the sideline with more space. Maybe they don't really know how to navigate those tight spots in between the tackles with a lot of those man blocking concept or counter runs and pullers, things like that. Maybe they just don't see the field as well, because I would expect, especially with the interior offensive line struggling as much as they are, I would expect there to be a little bit of a shift in more help, more tight ends in there to be able to give you more blockers, to allow more double teams in the middle, to really help out those interior offensive line guys. Because Tristan Wirfs can be fine on his own on one side, but you want as many duo blocks and combo blocks as possible on the interior, especially for the lack of push that they've been able to get. So curious to see whether they start to do that or not. And again, that just kind of goes into how much creativity they have and how willing they might be to deviate from clearly what they wanted to do going into the season, which is be more of a zone running team.
Sadly, I think they already answered that. Him saying they're going to be stubborn. They just got to get used to these run fits and reps. Yeah. So I think you're going to see a lot of the same. It's just them having to see it. They said they took more than a year in Seattle to get this running game going. So I think we're going to see it over and over again.
Yeah, they're trying. They're trying to do that mid zone scheme, and that's the offense, and unfortunately, it's just not working right now. And I noticed when they do the man blocking, like when they run out of shotgun, they actually do have success. Running out of shotgun, running just either counters or, gap run plays or duo, like you said, there's more success there. So I'm hoping that's what we just got to live with this one and roll with it, and kind of get away from the zone runs, because like you said, they're just it's not happening.
Yeah. And look, I certainly, I don't totally disagree with Dave, right? I mean, it takes a lot longer than 5 weeks for you as a new offense coordinator to really get the team to do exactly what you want them to do. But at the same time, it is tough, because if you don't have the horses to win the race, then you're kind of just square peg in a round hole, right?
Yep.
I mean, like it's almost like you're just bashing your head against the wall. But
something breaks.
right. But then I'm on a roll with analogies here. Do you want to be picking up pennies while stepping over $10 bills? Like, if you know that the long-term success of this team is going to be as a zone blocking rushing attack, are you willing to sacrifice that this year just to maybe win 1-2 more games if you know that you're trying to go for a bigger prize? I don't really know the answer to that question, because it's that's something that you got to decide in the building, and those guys that kind of have their hands on those offensive linemen, they know them best, and so I think that that's for them to answer.
Yeah. I mean, and just on one last thing on the running game, it's like we said earlier, it's everything right now with the run game. It's either the backs are not hitting the holes, or it's the offensive line not creating. It's tight ends missing blocks. So it's really a combination of everything, where there's just errors on all parties involved, and it's just nothing's working. But also I wanted to point out, like, Ben Johnson, the offense coordinator for Detroit, like he understood, like, okay, we're not going to run the football against these guys. And so what does he do? He turns to Jared Goff and throws it 44 times. And, they were just smart in how they attacked. Even when they were ahead, I really liked how they committed to throwing the football to get more, more first downs, continue to eat the clock. So those little things is what I'm hoping Dave can pick up and just understand, okay, this is just not going to work all game. We got to start passing on first down, be aggressive, pick up yards with the passing game, just set up maybe some runs where it's 2nd and 3, and we can hit our average there and pick up a first down, right? Yeah. So it's understanding those tendencies and understanding pass game is your strength right now. It's working. You got to stick with that and try to score points, because obviously that's the name of the game. You got to score early and often in this league to, do what you want later in the game, especially running the football as well.
This got me.
Yes. Yesterday,
Jay's always trolling. Always trolling.
Yeah. What a character, Trevor. I went to Minnesota with this guy, and man, it was a trip.
You were on the Minnesota trip? Man.
I was with him and his friend Cam, and man, what an experience. And I have another trip coming up, going to Green Bay with them later this year. So yeah. Wild times.
Plus the
Jay and Cam are lot 6 crew, baby. That's when I was a Pewter reporter, I didn't get a media parking pass. Scott Reynolds and Mark Cook got the media parking passes, because they claimed seniority on me, because that pass is closer to where the stadium is, and so I would get a lot 6 parking pass as a media member, and I would show up about 3 hours early, and they would beat me to the spot every single time. And so I'd hang out with those guys and tailgate a little bit, because you got to do that a little bit, even if you're media. You got to make sure you get a pulse of the fan base, and by that I mean get a couple of brats in before we go cover the game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing wrong with that. But let's move over to the passing game. So I mean, to me, what clearly is showing when we lose games, a lot of it's either missed opportunities, not just by Baker missing guys, but drops all over the place. And I know Mike's never been the best of hands, but he's usually reliable hands. I feel like I've seen more drops in these, 5 games than I've seen almost in the whole entire season sometimes, especially in big moments. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? And they're easy catches. They're hitting their hands. People are saying Baker's throwing too high. I'm like, it's hitting both hands. He can make a one-handed crazy catch, but you can't make a catch that hits you in the hands twice. But I don't know, like it's troubling, it's upsetting, and that ruins the momentum of an offense, ruins the just execution of everything. And then people get pissed off. You get the morale dropping. So, I mean, what do you see wins and losses? Because you just came from a Saints game where Baker lit it up. Everyone's saying the roller coaster high of Baker. And now, okay, we're talking bad about Baker missing, but there was also drops in this game as well. So it's not all of one guy. It's a team game.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, I'm looking at Mike's numbers right now. We've got him with 3 drops so far this season. And we have a stat that is catchable balls caught. So it is exactly what you think it is. If the ball is basically in a realistic spot where you as a pro NFL receiver should come down with the ball, that is considered a catchable pass. Mike currently has a 75% catchable passes caught percentage, which is without question the lowest of his career. Like normally he is high 80s, low 90s. And so 75%, I mean, 75% low for any receiver, let alone Mike Evans. And so it is something where I think everybody has noticed that. Certainly was it that Eagles game where those first couple of drives, they just kept feeding him. And it's just like, man, Mike's kind of got to come down with it. Like you could sit here and you can go, okay, well, that one was a little bit high, or maybe it was not exactly where it needed to be, man.
Couldn't be Mike's fault.
Well, I mean, Mike's an all-pro. Like Mike could be a future Hall of Famer, man. It's like you gotta reel those things in. So it's something that's got to get cleaned up. There's no question about it. And I saw a comment for somebody who's watching the show talk about, hey, we gotta switch the emphasis. We gotta go more towards Godwin. He's more reliable, and I think that has been the case with Godwin for a long time. A lot of people look at him, especially what he does over the middle, how he catches through traffic and how he catches through contact, and how reliable his hands are. And a lot of people just want to feed him, and they absolutely should. But this team's not going to be able to go where they want to go without Mike Evans. So it's not like you can just say, hey, we're going to pivot Mike's targets to other players. They're already giving the ball to Chris Godwin plenty. Like some games, Godwin's going to lead this team in targets. But if Mike's not going to be number 1 in targets during a game, at very worst, he's going to be number 2. And so it's a matter of, kind of like Baker said, not just for himself, but everybody, they got to play better. And Mike is good enough to play better. And he'd be the first one to tell you that.
Agreed. My thing is, like how this person wrote in there, not worth 25 a year. And that's the big thing too. Like, so it's a contract year. He's like, oh, I'm not playing for that. My agent said this. So like it's something I even get with Devin White. Like when they start bringing money into it, they start saying these things like that. And then your production isn't matching what you're saying you're worth. That's where I'm like, okay, well, why even bring this crap up and then not even show up to be like that person? So it's like, you're going to compare yourself to this. Well, you better be playing like that. Yeah. That's my 2 cents.
I mean, I don't think he's, I want to say, like, I don't think Mike's mailing it in. I don't think he's not focused, and I don't think he's thinking about money. I really don't. Mike's not that guy, and I think a lot of people who have followed him since the beginning of his career in Tampa know that he's not that guy. I really think that what happened earlier this summer was simply a play by his agent, and I think that you could even tell in the moments where Mike was answering questions about it, like he's just not comfortable. Like it's why I've been telling people, I think he retires a Buck. Like I think they figure this stuff out. I don't think he wants to leave. Mike is very much a family loyalty kind of a person, and not that he doesn't deserve to go out and get his money. If there's some team that's going to pay him like $30 million a year, I mean, I'd be bummed as hell, but even I'd be like, all right, go get it, man. I guess that's probably 5 or 6 more mil a year than the Bucs are going to be able to give you. But I think he wants to have been drafted by the Buccaneers, have broken the consecutive 1,000-yard season with the Buccaneers, and I think he wants to retire a Buccaneer. I think he looked at what Rondé Barber did, and he's like, man, I want that. Like I want, start to finish, I want to be a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. So ultimately, I think that he comes back. And the contract stuff, I think he agreed to probably let his agent leak those things to the media so that the fans would get riled up about it. It would put a lot of pressure on the organization because y'all know what happened. The second that news came out, every fan was like, you better not let Mike Evans play for another team in another jersey. And I really just think it was kind of an agent ploy. So I'm not too worried about the contract thing that happened earlier this summer. I don't think it's a reason why he's struggling right now. I don't think his mind is on it. I just think that Mike kind of has these moments. To this extent is new, but there have been a handful of times I even think over the last couple of years where I'm like, man, like Mike's gotta come, like you gotta come down with that. And I feel like he'll be all right. I think that he'll be fine. He needs to be fine if this team wants to get where they want to go.
Yep.
Yeah, agreed. And speaking of receivers, what's your you obviously a draft analyst. What was your thoughts of just drafting of Trey Palmer? And obviously he could have had a huge game yesterday. Unfortunate it didn't work out that way. But what do you like about his game? And do you see him as a, obviously contributor going forward for this team?
He should be. Again, like he's from very clearly wide receiver 3 on this team, receiving option 3. Like even if you want to put the tight ends involved, like he is without question. I mean, you saw the passes that Baker overthrew. I mean, he could have had 140 receiving yards that game.
Yeah.
If you hit that dude in stride, his speed is absolutely a weapon. You've got guys that you can use in Evans and Godwin all over the field, whether it's vertical stuff, sideline stuff, over the middle, quick game. So all sorts of different concepts. And it opens things up so much more when you have a legit deep threat. It doesn't take much. All it takes is Baker hitting Trey Palmer, let's say 3 times in the span of 2 weeks for the rest of the league to be on Trey Palmer watch the entire year. And all of a sudden, if you got 2 deep safeties and you got Trey Palmer on one side and he's coming across the line of scrimmage, that guy cannot try to rob over the middle if Chris Godwin's, trying to run an inside route. Like he cannot do that because if Palmer gets behind him, boom, that's 6. So I think that they are a couple of really good honestly, this past game would have been the perfect spot to do it. A major televised game against a future playoff team in the Detroit Lions, maybe future NFC champion in the Detroit Lions. Like people know Detroit. And if Tampa would have hit those couple of big shots to Trey Palmer, and if their victory or even competitiveness down the stretch would have been because of this new vertical threat in Tampa Bay, I think the outlook against other defensive coordinators for the next few weeks that follow is we can't get beat by this guy. We gotta make sure that we're playing way deep coverage and then all sorts of underneath stuff open up. And so Palmer's awesome. He is a much needed element to this passing offense, but you got to hit him.
Yep.
You just got to hit him.
Yeah. I mean, the dude's got some confidence. I'll give him that. He's got some balls. I mean, he's not afraid of the moment. The lights get bright. He gets brighter. I mean, like you just said, hit him when he's open. I mean, he's getting open. And it's not just this game. Like we've seen every damn game, they send him deep. He's usually open. It just hasn't been thrown to him. And at least they're seeing him now.
Yeah.
You just got to hit. I mean, that's something we were saying coming out of the bye. Like we see him open all the damn time. Throw the ball. Let's see what happens. Because we haven't had many throws deep to him at all. Yeah. They had him split out and just did a fade to the end zone in the Saints game. I couldn't believe he even did that. Like, use him to Mike Evans and threw it to him instead of throwing it to Mike Evans. Yeah, he was hurt, but they used him in that role, which is crazy. So it's, I just think get him more repetitions. Baker, you just got to hit him. I mean, this offense can be so much more dynamic. And then what is that going to do with the rest of the offense? Not just Mike getting away from the doubles, but people sitting back because, Trey Palmer's going in motion. You have to pay attention to him. What does that do with your running game too? Anything can help this running game because it's piss poor. So any little bit of I have to worry about this. It's going to get teams' minds off the run, and we need it. We need help in every way.
100%.
Yeah. So I mean, I just want to keep it on the positives as far as the offense goes. I mean, Luke Goedeke, just the process or the thought process of him right now, like just his playing so much better as a right tackle. Out of college, that's where he played. They tried him at left guard and it just didn't work at all. Like he was probably the worst guard in football last year. It was that bad. And to see the success that he's having so far this season, I mean, you have to be encouraged because as like a team building point, like stance, like if you have Tristan on one side and Goedeke as your future tackles for, years to come, obviously that's huge for, the next couple of drafts where you don't have to worry about offensive tackle. I mean, that's big. But just your thoughts on Luke so far in his season. I mean, obviously stonewalling Aiden Hutchinson. I mean, that's a big accomplishment.
Yeah, no, it's huge. It's honestly like another Jason Light draft hit. And certainly there are guys that you could point to, as I would say, over the last 5 years, maybe did not hit as much during the draft, but Jason's about as good as this as any GM is. And he just does not get the credit for it. And finding a future offensive tackle in Luke Goedeke when they did, and how they are able to then have the flexibility to be able to move Tristan Wirfs, it's huge. So I think that you're right. Even if Goedeke is not a future Pro Bowler or an All Pro, like if he is a solid starting offensive tackle, you've got an All Pro on the left side, and you're hoping that Mock can certainly batten down on one of those interior offensive line spots. And then, hey, you go into next year's draft and maybe you spend another second round pick on an interior offensive lineman. And now all of a sudden you got a really young, talented offensive line group. So it's huge for them, because if you don't, like if Goedeke would not have panned out, that's a much different story, because then you're looking at the offensive line, you're going like, okay, it's Wirfs and maybe Mock, but he's not a major difference maker as an interior offensive lineman. Like he's growing himself as a guy who played a lot of different positions at NDSU. So it's huge. It's huge for the outlook of this offensive line, and for him to be able to play as well as he did against Aiden Hutchinson, who not many people in the NFL have been able to stay in front of. It's a lot of respect.
Yeah, I liked Tristan Wirfs. He goes, you guys need to give flowers to 6'7" over there. I was just cracking up. He's like, yeah, he probably heard it too. Like how much crap was talked about Luke Goedeke, how people I'm surprised you got his name right. Majority of people don't even know how the hell to say the guy's name. Like we got so much crap for saying Goedeke or Goedeke.
It is intimidating though.
Right?
It is an intimidating name to look at.
But you nailed it. Like the second I was like, damn, he's done his homework right there. Like so the second
I'm a draft guy.
100% right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is crazy to see that transformation and to have your two end like that's and no one would have expected that. Like everyone's saying that the Bucs offensive line was gonna be the worst in the league and Baker's gonna get run all over, sack record broken, but
I mean, that was a big concern that I had. I didn't know what it was going to look like. Like you said, we're a year removed from him being one of the worst interior offensive linemen in football, and offensive tackle. You're going up against better pass rushers, so I understood that was a home position, but you're also up in the level of competition that you're going up against. So that was part of what gave me concern for what this team was going to be, because Baker is already somebody who. They think about Mayfield and they think about Oklahoma Mayfield, where he was able to he snapped the ball in shotgun and sprint around the backfield, just holding on the ball 4 or 5 seconds and then just launching it deep down the field. It just doesn't work like that in the NFL. When you're pressured in the NFL, yeah, you can escape, every now and then and get to the sideline, but like chances are you don't have time to set your feet again. Chances are you got an all-pro speed demon breathing down your back about to strip sack you from behind. So instead you're thinking, man, if I even cock this ball back to throw it, is my arm going to get chopped immediately and that ball's going to come out. So there's just a lot of things to think about when you're pressured in the NFL. And that's something that Baker has struggled with. And if they didn't have those offensive tackles, I think it would look a lot different. I think it really would.
Oh, yeah. And, I think that's where, a lot of people talk about regression to the mean with Baker, because right now, like, he's doing a great job of not being sacked. I think he's like one of the lowest in the league right now. But you look at the opposite of that, his big time throws, not very good right now. So that is something where he's got to pick that up. And that was case in point yesterday. He had the big throws there, just didn't make them. So, that's what we talk about when if he can pick that up, man, this team has a lot of potential to do some things. And, I I see the expectation. I know a lot, people ask this on Twitter, like, what's the expectation moving forward for this team? I still think it's to win the division. I think when you look at this division, there's no reason why the Bucs shouldn't be the best team out of this division. Like, I still laugh at insiders that pick the Panthers to win this division, pick the Falcons to win this division.
Was that you?
No.
I think Trevor.
No, I
picked the Saints.
I picked the Saints, and in all honesty, like, the Saints should be better than the Bucs. They're not. Like, they're not, clearly, from the game that they played and kind of how they played in some other games. Clearly, they're not. But I think roster wise, they should be better, but they are not right now. So you know, you look at the Bucs schedule, and with them being 3-2, if you go 500 the rest of the year, that's 9 wins.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, that's right around 500. Even if you just go 500 for the rest of the year, you're at 9 wins, which is much better than I think most people thought. What was well, Tampa's over-under was insultingly low at one point.
6.5.
I think it was 5.5.
It was at one point, it was 5.5, and I was like, okay, free money. Cool. Yeah. Just give it back to me.
Right.
But, you know, 6.5, I thought that they were going to be somewhere in that like 6 to 7 range. But again, you know, you start 3-2. I didn't think that they were going to beat the Vikings for as much as I thought the Vikings were going to regress. You know, it's an opening game on the road. So many new things for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Vikings absolutely lay an egg. You get that win there. They go into New Orleans and absolutely whoop on New Orleans. So I didn't see that one coming either. And so now you're sitting here 3-2, and again, 500, you win 9 games this year.
Yeah. I mean, you know, and you know, the next matchup is the Falcons, and I look at this Falcons team, and yes, obviously they've made a lot of improvements defensively. They're playing pretty good defense so far as numbers go. But I mean, you just don't have a quarterback. I mean, Desmond Ridder is just he's just not good.
Game, everyone's like, "This is it. This is the rise."
Right.
Like, what?
Like,
what?
Yeah.
Like you have Bijan Robinson. I understand, incredible talent, but the Bucs stop the run. Like, that's what they do. Like, they'll figure out to stop one guy, and they'll force you to throw the football. Or hurt them. You know, take out. They took out Montgomery yesterday, unfortunately, for, you know, Detroit. But I didn't see it, especially with the national media, like how they picked the Panthers or the Falcons in this division. I could always see it with the Saints, you know, but
dude, I watched so I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina now. That's where I live. And I got to go to a Panthers preseason game. I got to cover one. So I watched, it was when they played the Jets. So they did the joint practice versus the Jets, and I got credentialed, so I got to go see the joint practice, and then I got to go see the game. The Panthers' offensive line was atrocious. And I remember I was already not super high on the Panthers. Like, I think their defense is really talented, but I thought they had the one of, if not the worst receiving room in the league. I thought their offensive line was sketchy. I thought it was going to take a little bit of time for Bryce because he's not super physically gifted. Like, he's somebody who's going to beat you with anticipation, with his mind, like with all of that. And so you don't do that at the NFL level, like year one, or even certainly week 1.
Andrew Luck didn't even do that.
Right. And so when people were like, why not the Panthers? I was like, I can tell you why not the Panthers. What do you mean? What do you mean? Like, I can list things off. And so I didn't expect them to be 0-6, but anybody who was picking the Panthers to win this division was sipping some sweet Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
Well, they do an ad for whiskey on his show, so I guess that says why. But
go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I guess before we move over to the defensive side, like, people in the group chat acting like we're writing people off. No, like, we're just very critical of losses, because you learn a lot more about your team in a loss than you do about the wins, because you hide a lot in the wins. I really break down losses and literally find, okay, this is why we lose. Like the Eagles game, how many drops did you have? How many times drive killers because of drops, just lack of execution? And the same crap happened in this game. If you hit Mike or Trey Palmer at least once, it's a different type of game. Momentum shifts. So and the game was 20-6. Come on, guys. Like that, it's a huge difference if you can score a touchdown as opposed to kicking a field goal. Or like K. Daughton's pathetic excuse for a block that could have broken Devin Tompkins for a touchdown, but then we're limited to 3 there. It's like things like that. That's a momentum killer, drive killer, and you got 3 instead of 7. So it's things like that where good teams do it. Bad teams don't. And we're not bad. We're right in the middle. It's just we can't get to that level just yet. And is it because it's an early offense, just getting used to it? Maybe, but we just don't know yet. I'm not writing off Baker at all. I'm a huge Baker Mayfield fan, so guys, don't get so mad about that. I'm just very critical because it's a loss and I want it to improve. That's about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so I think, defensively we'll touch on it. And, obviously I thought they played a good game, but we got to start with, since we have a draft expert in here, we got to start with Calijah Kancey. Just talk about how good this guy can be. Like, 6 pressures yesterday, just insane.
Also, Trevor, did you at all anticipate the Bucs taking him? Because for so many damn years, we've always gotten a fat defensive tackle, big size. That's all they wanted. I wrote it off. I'm like, there's no chance. He's too damn small. Did you see this at all?
I didn't see it pre-draft, but after it happened, I went, okay, this does make sense because Kancey needed to go to a team that was going to be multiple with him anyways, right? The weight issues with him, you can't just say, okay, you're our full-time 3 tech. Like, we're just going to play you at 3 tech defensive tackle and you're going to try to survive here, because offensive lines would probably just duo block him into oblivion. But you can't really do that with Vita Vea next to you. And so that all of a sudden, Kancey's outlook as a prospect was, if you get him one-on-one opportunities, even against NFL offensive linemen, he's going to win. Yeah. He's that good. He's that fast. He's that powerful at his size. But if you combo block him,
watch him out.
You're in trouble. Like, he's in trouble. And so that's where the evaluation with him was tricky, because you loved the good and you almost didn't even want to play the bad. So then what do you do with him? Well, the arm length and the bend and the body type doesn't really lend itself to being an edge rusher. You can play him at 5 tech, but are you going to play him full time as a 5 technique 4-3 defensive end? Probably not. But Bowles is so multiple in his fronts, and Vita Vea is such a chess piece in the middle, that you cannot single block Vita Vea. He will forklift your offensive lineman back into the quarterback's lap.
Yeah.
You have to double team him. And when you put Calijah Kancey next to him, or Greg Gaines, or somebody who is of similar size and commands that kind of power, Kancey's going to get single blocks. And we've already seen 8 total pressures from him this year, which include the Vikings game and this past game against the Lions. I think his pass rush win percentage is first on the team, outside of Antoine Winfield Jr., but that's kind of like a specialized pass rush thing. But for defensive linemen, Kancey's pass rush win percentage is first on the team. And I think it's just because of the situations that he's in. So I didn't really see it before the draft, but after they drafted him, I went, I actually like this landing spot a lot. And he's been fantastic the amount of time that we've seen from him, especially coming off a calf injury. Like, lower body injuries are they limit your explosiveness. And if there's Calijah Kancey has to win with explosiveness. And so, like, coming off that calf injury, if he was limited at all whatsoever in this past game, which I don't think he was, but like, if he was at all, if he was anything less than 100%, holy cow, I can't wait to see what this guy is like at 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, he was, just outstanding. We were at the game yesterday, so, just watching the game back, like, yeah, he was pulling off moves that obviously we haven't seen since. It reminded me a little bit of Gerald McCoy, like, just the way he won, but obviously different players. Kancey wins with leverage and technique, and it's like always on point. So, yeah, it was just cool seeing that disruption. And like you said, with Vita Vea, him getting the one-on-one blocks, that's going to be a lot of fun.
No, I agree.
His acceleration is ridiculous.
Well, he was
nuts.
He's literally historic at the combine. Like, that 40-yard dash and that 10-yard split, those weren't just like, oh yeah, he was the best in his class that year. Like, no defensive lineman, no interior defensive lineman has ever run a 40 that fast. No interior defensive lineman has ever run a 10-yard split that fast. So it was one of those things where this is a historic athlete for the position. If you allow him to get in one-on-one opportunities, he's going to produce, and he is.
Yeah. I mean, there was one moment where he was literally went around in a stunt. It looked like Devil White. The amount of acceleration he has, just ding, 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 ding. It was like, it's insane. It's like, okay, I'm throwing it at the ground. There you go.
John Ledyard posted a clip on Twitter. I saw it just before this show where Kancey is going one-on-one with Penei Sewell. And he just like stack and sheds Penei Sewell because he hits him so quick. You can tell like it knocks Sewell back a little bit. And then as he's trying to regain his balance, Kancey just rips him and swims straight over him. And like, that's one of the more athletic offensive tackles in the league. And he's doing this to this dude. So, hats off to them for having Kancey that high on the board. Cause I think he's going to be huge for them. He really is.
Yeah. I mean, cause yesterday because I want to get into just some draft questions real quick before we end this. And, for the defense outlook going forward, if Kancey can provide that pass rush, that's going to help them on third down, because right now, third down is their issue. Like, they just can't get off the field. And that was the problem yesterday. Third and long seemed to, whatever reason, they just can't figure it out right now. But if Kancey can be that pass rush guy to help the outside edge rushers get more pressure, and obviously they're not going to face a Detroit Lions offensive line every week, which is one of the best lines in the league.
Right.
You got to think like this pass rush will start stepping up its game, and that will help their secondary be a little bit better, help with turnovers, etc.
Yep, I agree. I do certainly agree with that. Better pass rush, and the coverage will look a little bit better. It always does that way.
And what's nuts is I'm not a big Logan Hall fan, but like just having those two next to Villa, like knowing that Kancey's that much faster, he does have a quick swim move. I'll give it to him, Logan Hall. Does he do well in stopping the run? No, I wouldn't say that. But again, Vita Vea is the centerpiece. If you have anything of him and you have to think about Kancey, Logan Hall is going to get even less attention. So more power to him. He was getting some pass rush moves in there. He's getting a little bit better. I'm not going to write him off just yet, but I was just not a fan of the pick. But hell, prove me wrong. Let's see it. Like, I'm excited to see some pass rush with just front four. Like, let's just see if we can get it that way, because we haven't had that in a while.
Yeah. So, I mean, so with the draft coming, I mean, obviously it's a long way away, but just want to get your outlook for this team going into the draft for next year. Do you see like the needs matching as far as like the talent in draft? I mean, do you still see them picking a quarterback at some point? Maybe not first round, but obviously with the depth of this quarterback class, you would have to think if Baker's here or not, do you still see them drafting a QB?
It's hard to not see this team as all in or all out for a quarterback. Like, I think the quarterback class has the potential to be really deep in 2024. I like it a lot. Yeah. But I mean, either you're bringing Baker Mayfield back on a 3-year Geno Smith type of a deal, and Kyle Trask is just going to be his backup.
Okay.
Or you're moving on completely from both.
Okay.
So that's kind of where I am with quarterback. It feels like as of right now, they're going to be all in, all out. I don't know if they're going to dip their toe in the water, even if Baker Mayfield plays well. In terms of like what their needs might be, they might need another safety opposite Antoine Winfield Jr. And he's a pretty good safety class. I think there's a handful of different guys to look for. I don't think that they would go with a safety in the first round, though. I feel like offensive line would be where they would go in the first round. I think something along the interior offensive line. And it's a good interior offensive line class. It's not the greatest, although I do think that there is one interior offensive lineman who would be worth a first-round pick, and that is Graham Barton from Duke. He's their left tackle right now, but I think he's probably going to be an interior offensive lineman at the next level, maybe even a center, just because he doesn't have the arm length that NFL teams like for their offensive tackles. So you're probably kicking him into guard, but the dude's just got fantastic balance and grip strength for days. Like if he locks you up, you are not breaking his grip. He has such powerful forearms and hands and wrists, and like I don't know. I love that about the offensive lineman. So I think he would be worth a first-round pick. After him, there's a handful of guys I think you could probably pick on day 2. Cedric Van Pran, the center for Georgia. He's been their center for the last 2 national championship runs. He still is. I think he's a really solid player. Zach Zinter, the offensive guard from Michigan. He's been a really steady offensive guard over the last couple of years for one of the best offensive lines in the country. So I think that those are a couple of guys that you could have your eye on at day 2 who could potentially be starters for this team along the offensive line. And then running back, I think, is the splashy one, right? I think a lot of people want a playmaker from the running back position. And there's plenty of running backs to choose from. You don't have to pick one in the first round. I don't think there's a first round running back in this class. Like, there's not a Bijan Robinson that's going to tempt you, but there are a lot of guys that you could pick anywhere from round 2 to round 4, whether it's Blake Corum or Donovan Edwards or Braylon Allen or Trey Benson or Jonathan Brooks from Texas or Bucky Irving from Oregon. I think people got a good look at him from the Oregon and Washington game this past weekend. Like, there's just so many talented running backs that they could take a stab at one at any point in the draft.
I fully agree with that. Like, we're not high on running backs first round at all. They've won. Do not touch one. I mean, you can get so many later. Plus, you still don't even know what the heck you have with Sean Tucker. Like, we've seen a sprinkle, but you can't expect much from a rookie where, again, the offensive line isn't really blocking well for that guy. But also one more thing, like on the defensive side of the ball, do you think they find a replacement for Levante eventually, or are you thinking Dennis is hopefully supposed to be that? I mean, because then you could have potentially Devin White leaving as a contract issues too. I know they don't want to, but you never know.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens because obviously Levante's no spring chicken. I think that he's probably got. I mean, he's still playing at such a high level. I just don't know how much longer he's going to play. Like, it feels like a two-year max thing with Levante before he hangs it up. But yeah, I mean, the Devin White contract situation is looming because all of a sudden, even for the people who might not think that Devin White is worth the contract that he wants, if he goes elsewhere and you're staring down the barrel of maybe one more year of Levante David, you better hope that Dennis is serving one of those off-ball linebacker positions, and then you're going to need another one. Diaby is more of an edge rusher than he is a linebacker. So I think you will then need to draft one at some point. Right now, I think there's one linebacker who I would take in the first round. Oh, man, I don't even know if I'd take him in the first round, though. Barrett Carter from Clemson. He's a really athletic linebacker. And I know people get PTSD when they hear really athletic linebackers from Clemson because they think Isaiah Simmons, who wasn't a real linebacker, and Trenton Simpson, who wasn't a real linebacker. Barrett Carter, to me, is a real linebacker who is also very fast. So I think that he's more suited to be a linebacker at the NFL level than those other guys. But even him, he's not a super high impact linebacker. The guy who's right next to him is Jeremiah Trotter Jr., who is, Jeremiah Trotter's son. Yeah. He is so smart. He is to me such a good football player. He's just small. He's like undersized for the position. He's I think, shoot, let me look this up real quick because I have it in my.
He's not his dad's size.
No, he's not his dad's size
because his dad was a big dude.
He is
for years too.
He is Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is 6 foot, 230 pounds. So he is 8th percentile for off-ball linebackers in height and 14th percentile for off-ball linebackers in weight. So he's just a smaller guy, and that shows up with range in coverage and just overall strength at the tackle point when he's trying to bring guys down. But he's always in the right spot. His run defense is fantastic. I think he's got a great mind for coverage, even though he doesn't like cover a ton of ground. I don't know, man. I just think that he is also a dude that you would love to have at the center of your defense, but you could probably get him somewhere in round 2. So I just think it's not a super alluring linebacker class where you're like, yeah, there's plenty of guys to choose from and they'll pick one up. If they want one, they'd probably have to prioritize one somewhere in the beginning of the second round.
Yeah, man. I think offensive line obviously will be a top need. You can always use edge rushers or pass rushers at any point. I know in your last mock draft, you had us taking another Washington defensive lineman to add to the group. So I think it's Braylon Trice.
Braylon Trice. Yeah. True bull in a china shop. Like, dude's just going 100 miles an hour at all times, plays with extreme effort. He's got great speed to power. Like,
Mhm.
If Tampa feels like they need an edge, you know, there's definitely going to be one to pick in the first round. There's so many of these guys that are going to be available. I think Latu from UCLA is going to be a top 10 pick. He's
a stud.
awesome. He's such a stud. I think Dallas Turner from Alabama is probably going to be a top 20 pick. Same thing with Jared Verse from Florida State, Chop Robinson from Penn State. All those guys I think are top 20 picks. And then you get Braylon Trice. I think he's going to be a first rounder, probably back half of the first round. So there's just a lot of these guys that you can get good production out of. I mean, if JT Tuimoloau from Ohio State and Jack Sawyer from Ohio State, Chris Braswell from Alabama, like if these guys all come out as well, like those guys are going to be littered around on day 2. So
yeah,
they will have the opportunity to draft an edge rusher if they want one.
Yeah, I mean, so, and if we do pick a guy from Washington, obviously I hope for Michael Penix Jr., but it looks like that guy is on track to be maybe QB2, maybe QB3. I mean, he's playing lights out. If we are all in on a quarterback next year and it's not Baker, like that would be my guy to go trade up for, because I think he would be a perfect fit for, I think, Dave Canales' offense. And obviously, you know, with the play action game and him being a lefty, also from Tampa, like it's such a natural fit. That would be awesome.
You guys know that there is a corner in this draft from
TJ
Iowa
Tampa,
State, whose name is TJ Tampa.
Yeah.
Who is literally from Tampa.
Yeah.
If they don't take,
it's destiny. They have to pick him.
Oh, I would love
it. In all honesty, they will probably have a corner need, because I know they signed Dean and I know they signed Carlton Davis, but clearly their depth at corner is thin. I mean,
Zion's playing well.
He is playing better. So I guess now that I'm thinking about it out loud, maybe they'll be okay in the role with it. Because if they want Tampa, they'll probably have to pick him in the second round.
Yeah,
I don't think they do that. And Isian's playing so well as a slot. All right, maybe they won't. Maybe they won't.
Either way, they got to do it. Just do it.
Yeah.
Orders
all. I mean, I would love Penix Jr. than TJ Tampa in the second round. That'd be awesome. But man, Trevor, it's already been an hour. We appreciate all the time you gave us. This was a lot of fun, just talking Buccaneers football, talking draft, and just let all the good people know where they can find your work and your content, that you do such a great job. You and Connor Rogers on your podcast is just it's a pleasure to listen to.
I appreciate it, man. That means a lot. Yeah, the podcast is NFL Stock Exchange. If you guys are into the NFL draft at all, you can find us basically anywhere that you listen to audio podcasts, or if you want to watch it on YouTube, we put on a pretty good show there as well. It's just the NFL Stock Exchange, or NFLSE is the abbreviations there. And then I'm working on the 2024 big board basically every single day. That's my full-time job now. And so we just released a big board update earlier this week to expand it to, there are now 200 players that we have ranked on the big board already. All of that is in the mock draft simulator as well. So anybody listening to this, if you want to go over to pff.com, go to the NFL draft tab, hit the mock draft simulator. You can choose the Bucs and you can just run as many mock drafts as you want to see what kinds of players could be available and get to learn about some of these guys at any point in time.
TJ Tampa.
Yeah.
TJ Tampa, baby. Make it easy. Make it easy.
Awesome.
Just Tampa on the back. Tampa on the back of the jersey. Tampa on the front of the jersey. Makes it very, very easy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man. It's always a pleasure having you on. We hope to, get you back on hopefully sometime soon. Maybe, before the draft. That's always a good time to, talk, just talk. That we love talking draft. Like that's our second nature, especially after covering the Bucs in season and then getting right into draft prospects and doing game tape for it. It's awesome. So, guys, we appreciate everyone who joined us here tonight. Be sure to hit that like button. Comment down below your thoughts of this podcast. If you got, any other, questions or, about the game or what you're looking forward to as far as film reviews you want to look at, let us know and we'll get that out to you sometime this week. But always a great time. Mark, any last words before we head out?
Thank you as always. I mean, it's we steal you away once in a while, and it's always a blessing to get you on the show, and we truly value all your content you put out and everything. Like I'm obsessive watching the the draft content. I'm huge. Yeah, I watched your Kalijah Kancey stuff, ranking him the defensive tackles. I was like, yeah, just bypass it. We're not taking him. And I had to go back and watch it multiple times. So yes, they do amazing content. And yeah, if you're a draft sucker like we are, you'll suck that up all day. But yeah, thank you again for coming on to the show.
I appreciate it, guys. Truly, anytime. And yeah, once we get into draft season and you guys get to watch it, a handful of these guys, I'd love to come back on and talk about some targets for the Bucs.
Awesome.
Sounds good, my man. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, that does it for us. And everyone have a great week and go Bucs.
Woo!